Hello. Today I want to briefly talk about triangles. Coaches and managers of all levels are in a spot where they're highly likely to be drawn into conflict triangles or relationship triangles. You probably already know this, but I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the, at least one bit of social science behind triangles and what their behavior is about, and then a tip on what to do about it. This is not going to be a long enough video to give you instructions of what to do about it, but it's a direction to go. Okay, here we are. We're going to talk about, it's called the Karpman drama triangle. This social scientist, Karpman, he defined kind of the way these triangles happen and how people behave within those triangles. So he defined it, first of all, as there's somebody in the conflict that chooses to play the victim or takes on the victim role. So you have the victim, and then you have the persecutor, right? These are the two people that are in conflict. And then it's very easy for a manager, a leader of some kind, or coach, scrum master even, to be pulled in, and they usually would take on what Karpman defined as the role of the rescuer. These are roles in the triangular conflict, in the triangle. Victim doesn't necessarily mean that person is the victim or is a victim. It's that in their interactions within the conflict, they take the victim stance. It's not my fault. Something else happened. You did this to me. Those kinds of thoughts or attitudes, maybe not as an extreme as the example I'm giving, but that means that that person within that conflict has decided to take on the victim role or a victim stance. The persecutor is not necessarily somebody out to get the victim, but they are the person, they take on the role in the conflict of somebody who is right or understands the situation. You didn't do your part. I saw this happen. If you don't do this, then that. Now, to be very clear, in the conflict relationship, the victim or persecutor stance can swap easily. It's easy for the persecutor, for example, to the victim is saying, you did this to me, and the persecutor can say, no, I didn't. My manager said I had to do it, or something else. And so now they've swapped from persecutor to victim. So this can flip-flop throughout the conflict. Now, the rescuer is somebody, a third person from the outside, if you will, of the original conflict, who has now been pulled into the conflict, often by the victim, whoever's taking the victim stance. And their goal is to make the two people get along. How can I resolve this? I can be the hero if I solve this. And often that you end up, if you're taking on the rescuer role, you often end up with being the communication person, right? The victim doesn't want to talk to the persecutor, and vice versa. The other person doesn't want to talk to the other person, and trying to pass messages, right? Which is very basic rescuer function is I will talk to each one of them individually, and I'll try to get them communicate together, that kind of thing. What happens as a coach or as a manager or as a leader, if you take on the rescuer role, then it's very hard to please both the other two people. It's very hard to resolve it without picking sides. So we need to avoid becoming the rescuer. So this is where we get outside of Karpman's drama triangle, and we start to look at what can we do about it. If you are the manager in a situation where you have two people in conflict and you're looked at as the rescuer, you're starting to be pulled in as the rescuer, you need to take a different stance. The stance you need to take is that of a facilitator. You need to decide you're going to facilitate a resolution of the conflict. If you take a stance of facilitator, you drop these two arrows that create the conflict and you begin to focus on the relationship between the two people. You start doing relationship building. You start looking at how can you get along? What are the commonalities between the people? So as a facilitator in a conflict, you're trying to avoid the triangle, and you're trying to set up a situation where the two people in conflict will communicate directly with each other. So that's kind of one of the tips. As a facilitator, you're not going to be, you have to refuse to do message passing. Go tell Jill this. Go tell Arun that. You don't do that. If somebody wants to talk or tell somebody something, then you get them both in the room and you have them talk to each other. That's one of the tips of things to do. There's other things to do, such as what is a common goal of both of the people? Often, for example, in engineering discussions and even in leadership discussions, there's significant disagreement of what the next step should be, but both of the people are trying to do what's best for the situation or for the product or for the company. You as a facilitator need to pull people toward that what is the thing they both are trying to accomplish, and then you can look at, hey, how can we accomplish this together, and how can we maybe blend these two different ways or whatever. But that conversation needs to be with the two people present so that you don't create a triangle where you're going to miss out and lose every time.